So on the 46 Dodge, I'm still working on this light, and I'm trying to get it to fit a little bit better down here. It's a little low, and it seems like this whole area of the metal is moved up. I guess whenever I fix this area here, somehow that went up. So I'm going to try connecting something in there and pull it down this way and out, and hopefully in the process that'll take a little of this gap up. And then I think I'm going to come in here and put a piece of sheet metal in here, because this is just ugly. I don't like this weld on top of welds. So welded this little piece on here with a couple of tacks so I can get to it and cut them off. And I noted the size of it before I yank on it, so that way I know what I'm pulling it to. Okay, I think this is about as good as I can get it. It's a little bit low here, and coming around it's a little bit low through here, and then it starts to get to be really good, and then over this way it's just the light is sunk down in just barely, and I don't think I can make it much better. So I think by the time I body work all this, it'll be alright. And I was going to replace this, and I don't think I'm going to, because I don't want to make it any worse than it already is. It's just about to where I'm really happy, and I'd like to have it a little nicer, but I could cut that out, but then everything might move again. So that's what we look like when we're all bolted in there. And you can see I put this brace on here to stiffen that top part, and that's working out pretty good. So I'll have to do something with this rod that's coming across and connect it over there on that corner. And it's, you know, at least it's not hitting anything. I kind of guessed at that before that was before I even knew where I was going to put this headlight in here. And so another thing I got to do in here is put some kind of tabs in, like every so often, for me to put screws, and then I guess I'm going to put a thin layer of sheet metal in here so that rocks don't hit off this light and don't hit off the fender. So I put this rod in here, connected this piece from here over to here, and I'll probably end up putting a maybe a bolt on each side of it just to stiffen it so that all this material is together. And I think at this point the only other thing I have to do on this fender, other than sandblast the whole thing and epoxy paint it and maybe do some grinding and dent removal, I gotta put a screw through down over here. I have to do some kind of connection between this and here so I can adjust this and do the same thing up here and on this corner, and that way it'll all flow real nice into the back portion of this fender over here, because it's pretty much fixed, because it has a nice thick section here that's not going to go anywhere. And after I move on to the other fender and duplicate everything, then I'll come back here and I'll fix this portion over here. Okay, so you're looking at the passenger side fender, and you can see there's holes here and here and over here. There's a lot of holes. So I got some work to do, and I'm going to patch these holes, and then we'll move on to sandblasting. I got to clean up the sandblasting I did, and then I have to connect a rod in there, and I got to connect a flange on the inside of that fender to stiffen it all. Duplicate everything I did on the other side. So I'm not sure if you remember this template. I used this template to make the driver's side fender. Try to get it right because there were so many holes in the flange, and I had to take one of the flanges off because there's two flanges there, and I reassembled it all, and you can see there's a little gap up there. I got it marked how much of a gap there is. So this way I can use it on the passenger side. And there it is on the passenger side, and it's pretty close right now. Maybe not quite as big of a gap. Looks like the fender needs to go down just slightly. And so when I redo the flange on this side, I'll have to make up for that. So you can see all this flange has some serious holes and missing pieces, and I'm holding this template against it, and you can see how it's unbent. I need to bend the fender back down. That's the reason I made the template. And over here you see I had made this part before whenever I was working on the driver's side, so I just made a second piece, and that's the original piece, and so I have to get that lead soldered on. That's how I did the other one. So it looks like the the grill area or nose, whatever you want to call this thing, it has pretty good sheet metal. So I don't have to do anything with that. Over here on the fender, I'm going to replace these white pieces of paper with metal. And this area right here, this is going to be the one where I have to have everything finished before I weld it in, because I have to get the contour right, and that's really going to set that whole arc. And I don't know if you could see these holes right there, right there. There's a couple little ones over here. I'm going to have to weld all those up before I get into fixing this one, because that's probably going to bend the fender a little bit. Plus I got a bunch of work done here. I got to grind all this. There's a little bit of mud on there and get the dents out. So I made this template from the driver's side fender, and I'm using it here on the passenger side. I had to make those street cuts in order to try to straighten this out and get it as similar as possible. And these metal pieces here I cut out last time when I was doing the driver's side fender, so that way they're identical. And there you can see all the repairs I had to do. There's quite a bit. And once I lead solder these pieces in, then I'll have a nice stiff flange. So I put this inner piece of sheet metal in and lead soldered it onto the fender. So now I have my two pieces of sheet metal stuck permanently together. And I shouldn't get any rust under there since it's all leaded together. Then later on I'll go back and I'll sandblast the whole rest of the fender. And when I went to put the template on this side, it didn't fit. So I had to make these two cuts and push down on the one in the front and then lift up on the one in the back to get the right contour, so that way the fender will fit on now. So now both fenders are identical. So I'm not going to give you a lot of detail on all these fender repairs, but because I did this before on the other side, as you can see I patched those two spots. There's about 4 spots on this fender. And I'm patching this spot. You can see I get it pretty tight. Maybe a little bit too much of a gap on this one, but pretty close. And I got the 1/4 inch wire, which I'm starting to prepare to get soldered in there.
Okay, so here's the 1/4 inch wire I'm working on. And those two pieces right there would come up next to the split. And I still have to make the rest of that part for the split for the overlap. So I laid this line out on the fender, and that's where the cut's going to be. And not sure if you can see these tiny little holes. Put these tiny little holes in here so I could transfer that line into the inside. And then I'm using that to lay out where those two pieces of 1/4 inch are going to go on the inside of the fender. Same thing I did on the other side, because that's where the cut's going to be. And you can see the 1/4 inch rod there. And I'm going to have to bend it a bunch of times. It gets all beat up as I'm trying to do all this work, and I weld on it and things bend. So I'll have to keep rebending it. And here you're looking at the fender and all the body work that I did to replace all those holes. A lot of fill and patch work. And there's still some work to be done as far as straightening things out. But I think I'm going to leave this video here. I think it's a good stopping point for now. There's a lot more work to do in this fender. So have a good one.